Good morning. Today I'm going to read from the Transformation Healing by Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist monk from Vietnam, and he's a Zen master, poet, scholar and human rights activist. He was nominated by Martin Luther King for the Nobel Peace Prize in '67. He lives in Plum Village. So transformation and healing is one of the Buddha's most fundamental teachings, and it's from the Sutra on the Four Establishments of Mindfulness, and has been studied and practiced and handed down for 2,500 years. This sutra teaches us how to deal with anger and jealousy, to nurture the best qualities in our children, partners and friends, and to treat death with equanimity and compassion, which I think is really important. I'm actually recording this in the pandemic, and there's a lot of despair and misery and anger around, and I think we need to do some transformation and healing. So if you were able to possess only one book in the world on how to fare through the human existence with joy and knowledge, this is actually the one. It's got 20 exercises to guide readers through the fundamentals. So it's called Transformation and Healing by Thich Nhat Hanh. So I'm just going to read page 71, which is a mindfulness exercise on seeing the roots of feelings, exercise 12, and identifying neutral feelings and identifying unpleasant feelings and how to change this. So here we go. First of all, is a sort of a poem that Thich Nhat Hanh always puts in his text. So here it is. Breathing in, I know that a pleasant feeling has just arisen in me. Breathing out, I know that this pleasant feeling is still there. Breathing in, I know this feeling has a psychological basis. Breathing out, I can see the roots of this pleasant feeling. Breathing in, I can see the influence of this feeling on my health. No. Breathing out, I can see the influence of this feeling on my mind, and so on. So looking at how pleasant feelings are really powerfully healing. So when a feeling is born in us, we know that it is born because we're doing these following the breath of breathing in and we're breathing out. We're sitting, doing a mindfulness breathing exercises, and we can watch when a feeling is born in us, and we know that it's born. We have to do this every day so that we get familiar with how our feelings arise. As long as that feeling continues to be present, we know that it continues to be present. We look into that feeling mindfully in order to be able to recognise its nature. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? Its roots, its physiological or psychological roots? And its fruits, are they physiological, psychological or social? So the feeling creates all sorts of physical feelings in us, and it can actually create social fruits like despair, can make you lock yourself in your room or lash out or feel sick and not want to eat. So that we're connected, and when we follow the mindfulness teachings, we can see how connected we are through our breathing. We can use conscious breathing to assist us in carrying out this work of mindful observation. So breathing in, I know that a present feeling has just arisen in me. Breathing out, I know that that feeling is still there. Breathing in, I know that this feeling has a psychological basis. Breathing out, I can see the roots of this pleasant feeling. Breathing in, I can see the influence of this feeling on my health. Breathing out, I can see the influence of this feeling on my mind, and so on. Obviously, we can do this for despair, and we can also do it for anger and jealousy and love and all sorts of things. We can do it with confusion. So when roots of affliction such as anger, confusion and jealousy and anxiety manifest in us, our mind and body are generally disturbed by them. We have these horrible feelings. We can feel them in our stomach or in our chest or in our head or in our eyes. We lose our peace, joy and calm, and many of us at the moment with the pandemic are feeling it in our eyes, in our chest, in our guts. Very unpleasant feelings that we're seeing. How do we deal with them? We lose our peace, joy and calm. In the Sutra on the Full Ways of Breathing, which is this one, Sutra on the Full Ways of Breathing, really short and very simple but hard to follow every day. In the Sutra on the Full Awareness of Breathing, the Buddha teaches us to take hold of our breathing in order to produce awareness of the unpleasant feeling and gradually to master it. Breathing in, I know that I have an unpleasant feeling. Breathing out, I'm clearly aware of this unpleasant feeling. Breathing in, I watch the unpleasant feeling on the workbench of my mind. Breathing out, I watch the unpleasant feeling on the workbench of my mind. We watch it, we keep returning to this unpleasant feeling. If our breathing is light and calm, a natural result of practicing following our breath every day, so we follow our breath lightly and calmly, breathing in. I calm the feelings in me and just carry on watching. Breathing out. I calm the feelings in me and we carry on watching these feelings of unpleasantness, despair, anger, confusion. In this way, the practitioner continues to use conscious breathing to mindfully observe and calm his feelings. Every time she sees the substance, roots and effects of her feelings, she is no longer under the control of those feelings. Breathing in. I see despair. Breathing out. I look more carefully at that. I look underneath it. I look at the roots. I look at the effect of it on me. I breathe into the effect in my stomach. She's carefully tending them with a mindful awareness. The whole character of our feelings can change just by the presence of mindful observation. It starts to shift under awareness. It shifts and shifts because nothing is permanent. Fear, anger, despair are fields of energy that arise from physiological or psychological base. The unpleasant things that arise within us are also fields of energy. We can feel that. We're energetic fields. We can feel that energy of despair, of anger. The Buddha teaches us not to repress fear or anger, so don't repress it. Don't repress fear or anger or despair or the unpleasant things brought about by them, but to use our breathing to be in contact with and accept these feelings. So, breathing in, I know that I have a feeling of despair. Breathing out, I'm clearly aware of this unpleasant feeling of despair. Breathe in, breathe out, over these unpleasant feelings, with them, explore them, cuddle them. So we use our breathing to be in contact with and accept those feelings, knowing that they're energies that originate in our psychological or physiological makeup. To repress our feelings is to repress ourselves. So allow them to be on the workbench of the mind and just be with them and be kind to them and compassionate and say, hello despair, hello anger, hello, I'm with you. Come on, let's just see what this is all about. See the substance, the roots and effects of those feelings. To repress our feelings is to repress ourselves. Mindful observation is based on the presence of non-duality, which means that basically there isn't sort of good and bad. So basically our unpleasant feelings ourselves are one. We are the unpleasant feelings at that moment. We have to be in contact with and accept the unpleasant feelings before we can transform them into the kinds of energy that are healthy and have the capacity to nourish us. We have to, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, we have to face our despair, our anger, all of our unpleasant feelings, our sadness. We have to face our unpleasant feelings with care, affection and non-violence. These unpleasant feelings can illuminate so much for us. By our work of mindful observation, we can see that experiencing certain unpleasant feelings allows us insight and understanding. So I'll read you a little bit more about unpleasant feelings, but you just need to do my sound of the bell meditation, which is a half an hour long. You don't have to do the whole thing, or even just a 10-minute conscious breathing with my Plum Village meditation as well, which is on YouTube. And just have a look at what's happening at the moment. There's 2 really good videos to help you on my YouTube. Just follow the breath. The bell helps you to keep coming back to the breath. Both in the Sutras and the Shastras, the commentaries on the Sutras, the Sutras are the teachings basically. The ancestral teachers say the painful, unpleasant feelings are easier to recognise than the neutral feelings. We know that, don't we? But in fact, neutral feelings are also easy to recognise. They are not suffering feelings, they are not happy feelings. In us, there is a river of feelings, and that's another thing. When you're sitting there on the cushion, you're meditating, you'll see a river of feelings, and as your despair, you'll see it change, and then it'll move, and if you sit there long enough, it will actually be transformed and almost alchemized. But you have to sit there, for quite a while and sort of sit and watch those feelings and follow the breath. But anyway, if we go back to the neutral feelings, are also easy to recognise. They are not suffering feelings and they're not happy feelings. In us, there are a river of feelings, and every drop of water in that river is either a suffering feeling, a happy feeling, or a neutral feeling. Sometimes we have a neutral feeling, we don't think we have a feeling at all. But a neutral feeling is a feeling, it doesn't mean the non-existence of a feeling. So also be aware that neutral feelings are really actually pleasant feelings, and this is why. This is the thing that Hanh loves this idea, which is a good idea actually. When we have a toothache, we have a feeling of pain, and when the toothache is no longer there, we think we don't have a feeling anymore. But in fact, we have a neutral feeling, no toothache. It's not a painful feeling, so it must be either neutral or pleasant. Actually, it can be a pleasant feeling because the toothache's gone. When we have a very bad toothache, we wish it would stop. We know if it were to stop, we would have a very pleasant feeling. Therefore, a non-toothache is a pleasant feeling. So we need to be aware that actually where we are with our neutral state of mind, which is most of the time, hopefully, is a pleasant feeling. That's a pleasant, joyful feeling. And when something terrible happens to us, like at the moment with all this terrible pandemic, we can see that those neutral feelings are really valuable and gorgeous, and we want them back. The neutral feelings that we have actually without severe circumstances. Once the toothache has gone for some time, we no longer appreciate our toothache. We could call it a neutral feeling. But with awareness, it can become a pleasant feeling, no toothache. In Plum Village, we usually say someone who practices mindfulness can change all neutral feelings into pleasant feelings. And in fact, neutral feelings are the majority of our feelings. Yeah. So particularly we're looking at the how to manage anger and despair, and that we actually nourish them and we put them on the workbench of our mind. There's another exercise 14, observing anger and negative feelings. So we could have a look at that just briefly. 80. Let's have a look at 80. So finally, mindful observation is like a lamp that gives light. It's not a judge. It throws light on our despair or our anger or our misery, sponsors it, looks after it in an affectionate and caring way, like an older sister looking after and comforting a younger sibling. When we're in despair or angry, this is our very self. To suppress or chase away our despair or anger or unpleasant feelings is to suppress or chase away ourselves. When we're joyful, we are joy. When we're in despairing, we're despair. When we are love, we are love. When we hate, we are hatred. When anger is born, we can be aware that anger is an energy in us. We can change all of these energies into another kind of energy. If we want to transform it first, we have to know how to accept it. For example, a garbage can be filled with decomposing and smelly organic material, can be transformed into compost and later into beautiful roses. At first we may see the garbage and the flowers as separate and opposite, but when we look deeply we see that the flowers already existed in the garbage and the garbage already exists in the flowers. The beautiful rose contains the garbage in it. If we look carefully we can see that. It only takes 1 week for a flower to become garbage. The smelly garbage already contains beautiful flowers and fragrant herbs, such as coriander and basil. When a good organic gardener looks into the garbage, can she see that and so does not feel sad or disgusted? When a good organic gardener looks into her garbage, she can see that these are potential, and so she does not feel sad or disgusted. Instead, she values all this rubbish, this pile of rotting decay, and doesn't discriminate against it. So basically, we need good and we need bad, and it's actually not really bad, is it, garbage? It turns out that rotting stuff is essential. It takes only a few months for compost to transform into fragrant herbs and flowers. So not even very long. So I think that Hanh is saying that basically all these negative feelings can be transformed. We also need the insight and non-dual vision of the organic gardener with regard to anger and despair. We also need the insight and non-dual vision of the organic gardener with regard to anger and despair. We can use those energies and transform them. We need not be afraid of them or reject them. We know that anger and despair is a kind of rubbish, of garbage, of decay, negative. But that's within our power to transform it. We need it in the way the organic gardener needs compost. If we know how to accept our anger, our despair, we already have some peace and joy. Gradually, we can transform our anger or despair completely. We need not be afraid of anger or despair or reject them. We know that these things are a kind of rubbish, of decaying matter that can be transformed. That's page 82 in Transformation and Healing, exercise 14, exercise 14, observing anger and despair. So, I'm just going to add one bit here, that basically with the, I've got a chronic medical condition, diabetes, which means I have to keep an eye on my sugar levels all day, every day, and it's shortens your life, and these awful things happen to you with it. And the anger and despair that I could have felt around it, which I did feel around it actually, people said to me, one person said to me in the very early days, it's a gift. I'm like, what a load of rubbish. But in fact, it has turned out to be a gift, because you can use these feelings and experience that no one else has had in my social circle, because I got it when I was 30, to transform your work in the world and who you are and how you feel. And you can actually find yourself in a different path that actually is like the lotus path. And Thich Nhat Hanh says if there's no mud, there's no lotus. So you have to have suffering to get to the lotus point. And only yesterday I got an email from the Shift Network saying, a network of sort of progressives, spiritual progressives, that said, that talked about a man who had HIV back in the 80s. And he too used that deep suffering and mud, as it were, and despair of this to become transformed. And he's now a spiritual teacher. So sit with the despair and the confusion and just sit with it and see what's underneath it, the roots of it. And also, I'm just going to say one last thing. Nothing is permanent. When you follow the breath, you can see that the breath is in, out. Nothing's permanent, nothing. That's the good thing. Children would never grow up if something was permanent. We all have our little time of manifestation and then we move on. You look at the rose, it lasts about 2 weeks, if that, and then it's gone. Nothing's permanent. So your feelings of anger and despair aren't permanent either. Just sit with them and transform them. Don't repress them because they'll come out in other ways, and we're all locked in at the moment. So your feelings, negative feelings, what might rebound. So process them and transform them on the mat. Use my 2 practices: Plum Village, conscious breathing, and the sound of the bell. And happy meditating. Is that now?